we don't have Patrick Mahomes. So
Right.
there he is.
All right.
Don't let me interrupt the football talk.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah,
throwing some Hail Marys here. That's all we're doing.
Oh, okay.
Richard.
I like your background.
Thank you. Yeah, that's man, that was one of my paintings I did a long time ago. So
Hmm.
I dabble in the visuals as well. So
So do I. Fantastic.
yeah, keeps I don't know, it just gives you a little extra perspective on life. Make kind of refreshes the waters.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um But gentlemen, thank you so much for taking a minute out to be a tandem here to talk about your brand new album, Parker Plays X. I really appreciate it. I know we've all respectively met up individually, so it's good to be in a group collective here in our post-pandemic era of living.
Yes, sir.
And with that being said, how are you all doing? How does it feel to have an album out? How did you survive the pandemic? What does it feel like now?
Well, I mean, for me, it was this album was a big help getting through this pandemic. I mean, we Richard and I, Richard was the first musician I got to play with uh, while the pandemic, had happened. Once the first wave of vaccines came through, and we felt a little like, okay, let's open up our bubble. Um, Richard said that he would love to play. So I mean, it really kept me going, and he's quite prolific with his writing, and kept coming with new songs. So it was a lot of fun. Um, and then it kind of, I don't know how long time is anymore. I mean, it's just like how are we, how far out of this pandemic are we? I mean, it's the whole thing gets all blurred for me. But
Yeah.
putting the record out, it felt like we even though I feel like it could have, it was like that weird space where, is this taking a really long time or did we do it really quickly? It felt like I was just like, I'm not, it felt like at days it felt like the project was, took forever, but then it really happened quickly.
What I remember from the pandemic, especially about Matt, is that we tried to play on Zoom a few times, and we were totally fine if we played a ballad, because he would just sound like he was getting like more and more Ben Webster because of the lag in the time. And then, but anytime we tried to play anything that had any tempo to it, we couldn't sync up in time.
Yeah.
And for me, after the original shock of the pandemic, I actually found it a pretty creative time because it reminded me of lot like of when I was like 16 years old and all I did was practice and like go to a room and not really talk to anybody, because as anybody who's ever met a piano player in their life knows, we're kind of antisocial creatures and have had to spend much more time by ourselves than the other instruments. Like, for instance, drummers, they play for around 10 minutes and they join a band, but piano players spend a lot of time by themselves. So I
Yeah.
just felt like I was back to the old days.
So, how did this idea of the album come together? How did you two hook up and kind of creatively construct this project?
Go ahead with that, Rich.
Okay, Matt, I will answer that. Thank you. Well, we met around 6, 7 years ago, and at the time, I asked this drummer, who I know, who played a lot of sessions. I said, "Who is the craziest saxophone player you know?" And he didn't even hesitate. And he goes, "Oh, you're gonna like this guy. He's a little weird like you." So Matt came over, and I remember he played like, I don't know, he played like 4 bars of some song, and we both stopped like, "Oh, this is going to be good." And so then Matt was playing in my band a little bit, and then of course, it being New York, there's pickup gigs where I'm playing in his groups and different things like that. But at a certain point, when he was still in Greenpoint, I used to take the ferry up, and I would practice with him. So we had practiced some songs, and I knew that at the beginning of the pandemic, um, for some reason I was more into jazz than I always am, than sometimes I am, because I also play world music and raga and actually sort of like electronica music, but I was into jazz, and I was like, okay, well, then I have to do something with Matt. And I started hearing his sax in my head as I was working on different pieces and stuff like that. And it's very specific pieces that are done for Matt, because they're the melodies are more like road maps to where you go, and then he just fills it out. It's not as quite as specific as some other things I might write, where you can just get any loser to play. But for these ones, we needed Matt, and Matt was, and I knew that I knew he was going to be available because of the pandemic, and I knew also that people's emotions were raw because of the pandemic, and that something could be captured during that time creatively that maybe you're not going to be able to capture like this year.
Yeah.
Because it was a certain lack of distraction. I guess that's the best way of putting it, because our regular lives are very distracting, but the pandemic time, for better or worse, it kind of moved us to essentials. We didn't talk to as many people. We didn't see as many people. My poor wife only was able to talk to me for like 3 months, so all those things contributed to this record.
And I was just along for the ride. I mean, you have somebody pitch you an idea of like, oh, I've got these songs that I think would be perfect for you, and they're just a blast to play. And as humble as Richard is coming off by saying road maps, I mean, this guy really knows how to write some beautiful melodies. And so anytime I get to sink my teeth into some really nice melodies, it just makes it really easy to just want to play over it. So that was just it felt like an absolutely yes kind of concept for me. So it was great.
So when I saw your names on paper, and I've interviewed each of you respectively, I was like, this is perfect. It's like the cosmos just shined a beam down on you two and threw you together. It just makes sense. And the music makes sense. It's like, it's such a, it just seemed like the perfect cauldron. So now that it's physically out and it's happening, I mean, how does it feel cerebrally to have this out and to have had this meeting of the minds on this project?
Well, I'm really glad that it's out. I'm glad that one of the greatest things about making a record is putting your collective thought and powers into some music, and you give it worth by bringing other people onto it, and putting out a record. It's more than just the musician, so getting to work with all of those different artistic minded people that want to see an album come together. And we've been on the radio, which has been a lot of fun for me, seeing like where it's all these different cities all over the country that are listening to it, so that's encouraging. And then at the same time, it's also just like it's such a whole once you put it out. You put all this thought and energy, and you're learning this music, and then you put it out, and it's just kind of like it's almost like a vacuum feeling. It's like, oh, now what am I going to do? And it's on to the next thing in a lot of ways. But it's that's why live performance is so key, to try and find ways to continue to play the music and bring it to audiences across the country, which is always the goal.
I wouldn't say we're at the point yet that when we play live, I think to myself, oh, we should have recorded it now. We sound so much better live than we did then. But that's where you really want to get with the music, because as we know from all musicians, after a while, they're like, oh, I wish I could redo this. Because generally when you record stuff, it's more or less on at least in my case, it's more at the beginning of when I know the music. I mean, I practiced it a lot at home and different things. When I finish this answer, I'm going to leave for a second and close a window because I live on a very busy street and things seem to be coming through there. But so, of course, we have a, you know, we have a vision, and we love to share it with people. I was talking to Matt last night, and I was saying, "Oh well, do you play bass clarinet?" And he goes, "I do." I say, "Because I have these ideas about bass clarinet." And then I'm looking at him today, and I see right behind him, he's got a bass clarinet set up behind him. He's got his alto flute because he's telling me about his flute. He likes to tell me about like the regular clarinet just because he knows I hate the clarinet. But so we're enjoying this release, but we're also talking about like what are we going to do next? It's a little like hamsters on the wheel that you know, that never stop for too long.
So I like to treat interviews like an improv set. So I don't have any problem with the ambient noise. So if you want to keep the window open,
Oh, okay.
I love getting the texture of where you're at. So you can keep it open. It's cool.
Well, where I live is right on the Brooklyn waterfront, and there was never any traffic on the street until they invented GPS. Because it was like an unknown street and it gets you everywhere, but nobody knew how to use it.
Yeah.
And now, of course, the computer tells everybody to go down it. So it's a traffic jam around 19 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Where do you live?
I'm in Kansas City.
Ah,
Yeah. So it's relatively sedate until you get into like Midtown or the inner bowels. But yeah, it's nothing like, you know, nothing like a big city at all.
yes, but as far as I understand, it is the birthplace of real jazz.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Charlie Parker. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
18 and Vine, I still get down there and just kind of sometimes I'll just close my eyes and just imagine all the ghosts floating through from, you
Mhm.
know, Miles to Charlie and all the guys. And we have a guy here locally named Chuck Haddock, and his memory is like a steel trap. And every once in a while I run into him and we're down there and he'll just tell me about how Bird was walking down the street and he had a chicken leg in his hand and he ran into somebody and he was by this club and this club. It's just amazing to just, it's
Mm.
like Norman Rockwell's painting this tapestry of what used to be. And it's so cool. It's romantic.
Right.
So, um, so let me ask you this. What are you hoping the listener gets from this project?
Okay, I'll answer that. I would say it's the same on everything I release. I'm hoping that I hope that they get some joy from it. I hope they get some transcendence from it, and I hope that if in terms of it being a groovy record, which this one is, I hope they dance to it.
Yeah.
Other ones, the raga ones, it was more like I hope they meditate to it. I have no problem with it being background music as well. I often, I feel like for me, um, I guess because the way people digest music has changed over the years, I I don't want things to be as raw as we would be live. So I want the essence of what we do without it being quite as the top as it is live, because the versions we do live are more raucous. But I want it to be raucous enough that it's a party music, but not so raucous that people are like, "Oh, I got to turn this off because you know, somebody hates it in the room." So it's like trying to get a balance at all times.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Richard just said. I mean, that was kind of the shared goal for this project, was to try and find like a really happy place for um, emotional expressionism through kind of these bursts of improvisation, but not, not really scare anybody away. It's like, just give them just a little bit. We'll just give them just a little bit, and then everything's okay. We're fine. Everybody's, it's right back into the groove. So you know, my mom, she's not, ow, this hurts my ears. You know, you know, any record I put out, you know, I always, you know, see how my mom likes it. And, her most famous quote is, can it just something hummable? Can you just give me something hummable that I can just put in the car and it just relaxes me? So this passed that test, which was great. You know, a lot of the songs on the record, to what Richard was talking about, as far as the live performance, really does take on a completely different experience. You know, we tried to keep everything very concise, almost using the Kansas City movement of, when all of that great music coming out of Kansas City, you weren't listening to anything over 3 minutes. I mean, sometimes there'd be a ballad, maybe there's like a really deep bassy cut, where it's just like they were putting something out at 3:04, So we were trying to grab that attention, and that was our kind of homage to the past, in a kind of conversation we had about how long should these songs be. So yeah, we when we do these live, I don't think any of them match our studio recording time length on any of these. We really cut loose.
I mean, one of the things is that when you play live, no matter what you play, people just hear it once. So no matter how wild it is, it's just part of an experience that will go. But when you hear things over and over, it's a little different. So I would say, adding on to that, I feel like Matt he's like the gateway drug to Albert Eiler or something like that, So first you listen to Matt, and then you're like, wow, I want more. I just want to hear shrieking sax the rest of my life. And then you can listen to Matt and other people as well. But I used to play with a couple. I always wanted somebody who contrasted to what I do. And that's the biggest thing to me. It's like, I don't, and to me, Matt's playing is nothing like my playing in a lot of ways. So that's what I like is the contrast. And one of the things about the lengths of the songs is that, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but at the beginning of the pandemic, for me, it was like, I was very like nostalgic for old music, which is not like me at all. Normally I listen to pretty much things that are released this year, but I was listening to like this old Monk and stuff like that, and stuff I hadn't listened to forever. And I was like, wow, I really like these songs where they were 3 minutes, a lot better than the 10-minute ones with the bass solo and the drum break and the third saxophone player takes a solo and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, it's all getting in 2.5 minutes, and we can do the same thing. And it's one part of the jazz tradition that I think has been really good in the last 10 years, is that people have moved towards that short form. So a lot of people I enjoy listening to now are kind of like playing short songs, and I mean, part of it, of course, has to do with Spotify and everything else and people's short attention spans, but I think it makes for good music as well.
So my 1980s brain kind of blew up when you were talking about your mom. I was thinking mom tested, musician approved. What was the commercial? There was a cereal, I think. They used to say mom tested, kid approved. Wasn't there something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
I can't remember the actual brand, but I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
I think it was the most sugary cereal on the market at the time. So, the one thing that you keep honing in on, which I think is the key about coming out of COVID, and I speak personally and probably just for a lot of people, getting back out to see live music is just amazing to see. And you realize the kind of experience. And Richard, you put it so well that it's like it happens once and that's the experience. So my question to you is, what are your plans as we move forward right now with you guys getting together and performing this live? What kind of itinerary are we talking about?
It's been really, actually, completely honestly, it's like what stuck in the mud, as far as getting this, getting live opportunities. And unfortunately for the record, I feel like it, falls a lot on me, as we put this out on BYNK Records, which is a label that my wife and I started 10 years ago. And it's when you start having these bigger visions, you have to bring people in to help. And I feel like I've kind of fallen short on being able to make solid connections with people that can help book, our managers that actually have relationships with live venues across the country. And so it stayed very localized, and because of that, you don't get that same kind of run that you would hope to be able to get, where you're playing it for multiple audiences night after night. I'm definitely not opposed to continue to keep trying for this record. I mean, this is one of the great things about this record is I'm not tired of it. I don't think Richard's tired of it either. And it's like we are really looking forward to just like having this and using it to looking forward for that next opportunity for somebody to say that they're ready to hear some music. And we have a huge book of music that is for sure going to put on a really great show.
Well, I would put a more positive spin on it.
What, that I'm not just really bad at doing this?
No, I mean, because there were a lot of things that happened, some good and bad. Like for instance, Matt's been touring a lot with Michelle Dorrance, the tap dancer, and that's been a big time show. She's a MacArthur Genius winner and all this stuff. And the bad was I almost died this winter, so I was really recovering at the point that the record was released. So I was like, it was enough for me to like get up and kind of go through my day. I couldn't even really imagine touring. And I only would say that I got to the point where I can imagine doing it like around a month ago. And my other positive spin is, as always, is that in my experience, every release I've ever done didn't start to pay off for at least a year and a half. And that was very much how it worked with all the Raga records I worked. It's like they came out, it didn't seem like anything was happening, and the next thing I knew, I was giving concerts. But I was all of a sudden like, oh, how's this piece go? I better listen to that one again, because it had been recorded like a year before, then it had come out, and so it was a while since I had played the music. While the music is modern, I certainly hope it's not too trendy, like in terms of anything. So it should sound fresh 2 years from now or 5 years from now or whatever, without, of course, all music will end up sounding in some way like it comes from its time. We know this. You listen to a 90s jazz record and you put it on and there's just something about the sound and you're like, okay, this was done in 1993. It doesn't sound quite like you expect it, because it doesn't sound like how people record now or even how they recorded in like the 60s, right? So it's going to be of its time, but I feel like we have places to go and time with it, and I'm feeling much better and like ready to leave my room again, which is a fine thing. So generally speaking, once you can imagine things happening, then they start to happen.
So where is the best place for people to pick up Parker Plays X? And if you do live gigs, or each of you respectively, your worlds of music, where can people out there that are listening go?
Absolutely. Well, they can go to BYNKRecords.com. They can find both Richard and I on Bandcamp.com. You can find all of our music on all the streaming sites, such as Spotify and iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube Music. The first few, richardxbennett.com. If you visit any of our name sites, you'll have that opportunity to purchase the music, which of course we greatly appreciate. But yeah, all the streaming sites will have it as well, and you can listen to it in so many different ways nowadays. So it's exciting and very accessible.
And what is your website, Matt Parker?
Oh, mattparkermusic.com.
Oh,
Cool.
We've got a lot of .coms.
Yes.
You know that Matt has to be a real great musician because he has a very generic name, yet he owns his music site. At a certain point, I had to add a certain initial to my name to be heard in this world.
That's excellent. Gentlemen, hey, thank you so much for opening up about this project. It's great to catch up with you. And I guess the one byproduct of this COVID thing is that it's really actually nice to see all of you in living color. So thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. It was our pleasure.
All right, cool. Gentlemen, take care. Have a great day.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you.
Bye now.